Since I got into this hobby, I've been using my Lenovo Yoga laptop. Very, very nice laptop. Also, not something I want to leave outside and do all the time, right? The surest way I can think of to ruin a nice laptop is to leave it in wet, humid conditions. So it's held up fine. It's done an admirable job, but it's got some limitations. It has, one USB-C type port here and one USB normal type port here. They're both USB 3, which is good, but that's it. So I have to do a lot of things with dongles and hubs and stuff like that in order to hook up all my gear, which is a giant pain. So today I'm gonna ditch this computer for astrophotography. It's still gonna be my baby most of the time for other things. I'm going to be setting up the Primalucci Eagle 3. That is a computer that attaches directly on top of your telescope. It's meant to handle all sorts of things like power, dew control, has tons of ports on it, that kind of thing. And most importantly, it's designed to be a little bit more ruggedized, and it's to connect up with the rings and things that I already have. So without anything else, let's get to the unboxing. So let's get started here. First of all, we have the Eagle computer. Also, I picked up the Echo, which is their environmental control device. This is what works with the Eagle to do automatic dew control. I have a box currently that does that, but it's kind of got some redundant things regarding power to what the computer has, so I decided to go for the same color scheme on all of that. Additionally, I have two power cables. We'll get to that in a minute and why I needed to get these separately here. All right, so let's start with the Eagle, and let's go ahead and open this guy up. Pouring out the code here, we have our instruction guide. It's a single sheet of paper. Really what this is telling me to do is look at the PDF document that is on a USB drive included in the box. All right, and here we go. So here it is itself, the Eagle computer. So this is a full Windows 10 machine. It comes in a few different setups that are really pretty close to identical except for processor and hard drive space. So, if you're interested in this, the price ranges can vary a lot depending on which one you end up getting. So, to start off with, I've got 4 USB 2 ports right here. They're each labeled. For this, you can actually do things like toggling power for the different, or resetting the different USB ports individually, which is pretty cool that they do that. It's something we have to do a lot out in the field if you have, for example, your focuser stops talking correctly. You've also got 2 USB 3 ports right there. Neither one of them are the funky C, so I can get rid of one of my dongles that I'm using. These are antenna hookups. We'll take a look at those in a minute. Nothing on this one other than FCC stuff and that kind of thing. On this side, you have a small thermal exhaust port just waiting for an X-Wing to shoot into it. 2 HDMI ports, Ethernet if you choose to run Ethernet. I probably won't be, but this could be really, really helpful if you had a remote observatory and you want something that was a little bit more reliable than Wi-Fi. 2 more USB 3 ports, which is fantastic. So now I have 4 that I can work with, 2 on each side, which is great. Then these are the power ports for dew control or like a light box, that kind of thing. Got your on off, and this is probably a reset button. Not sure I like the way this is because it's not a rocker switch type thing, so it might be pretty easy to accidentally bump these power or reset buttons in the night there. But I think the idea is once you have it hooked up, you're not really going to be touching it except to turn it on or turn it off. And then lastly, on this side, you get to the power. So this is one of the points of frustration for some people when they're looking at this, is the power cables, if you notice, are all somewhat, they may not be fully proprietary, but they're definitely different than your standard kind of 12 volt plug cables, you know, the 2.1 millimeters or whatnot that we're used to. So that can be a frustration point, having to buy new cables, which is, you know, what I did for the cables that I have over here. But let me show you why I think this is actually a good thing, even though it's a little bit more upfront of an issue. So, you know, let's say I'm plugging in, you know, my focuser here or something like that. It needs power. It's going to use that standard plug. So I plug it in there. And then I'm going to plug this in on the computer. If this was a normal kind of power box, I just have the same end on the other side. Problem is, and we've seen this before a lot, is sometimes in the middle of the night it can kind of slide loose and stuff. That's why some mounts and some other things come with threaded cables. This is a threaded type of cable. It's also, if you notice, the may be kind of hard to see. If you see the three kind of power prongs in there, this is kind of like when you use a grounded power plug and there's only one way it can go in, right? So if you notice, they have 2 female plugs and 3 male plugs here, right? So these female plugs are 3 amp out, and these 2 plugs, the male plugs, are 8 amp out. So if you have something like a camera that requires more amperage versus, you know, say a focuser maybe doesn't need as much, you can make sure that you don't accidentally plug into the wrong power when it's at night, because this one, male to male, obviously isn't going to attach in. But when I go male to female, I can plug it in and then thread down my connection. So now, not only am I ensuring that I'm using the right amperage for what I'm plugging in there cable-wise, this sucker is now also rock solid. It is not going to come out in the middle of the night from the computer. The other end of my device, that's outside of their control. But so that is really the benefit of these kind of cables. Especially on the female ones, it takes a little bit to actually work it out all the way. But there you go. So at the end of the night, I'm not planning on removing these. You know, I'm going to remove it from the other end and then just leave it attached to my telescope as is, leave the cables in there. So that is what the Eagle looks like on its own. Let's move on to what else is in the box. Next in the box, we've got a bunch of screws. These are great because the Eagle has on it a bunch of screw holes. These screw holes match up with their plus system, which is essentially dovetail and rings system. So this can actually sit in as if it were kind of a Losmandy dovetail on top of my rings, and then I can attach my finder scope directly on top. Then this little guy is the thumb drive. Very important. In a minute here, we'll switch over to that thumb drive for our getting started instructions. And then another power cable. This is the one that comes with the device. It's the cigarette adapter cable. In order to plug it off of AC power, you would get a different special adapter. They're currently sold out on those. So one of two things is going to happen with this video. Either the DC power supply that I've got is going to power this all just fine, or we're going to jump cut to when I actually get the right cable. And then lastly, we have our 2 little antennas here. So the Eagle can be run either on your home network, if you have a Wi-Fi network already, which is probably the way I'll be running it in the backyard, or it can be run as an access point. And either way, one of the problems I've had with a lot of little computers and things like that that try to do this is the signal reception is not that good. You've really got to be close to the scope. If I'm inside and using it as an access point, maybe the Wi-Fi drops out on it, or I'm just not able to reach to it. I'm hopeful that the fact that this actually comes with some additional antennas on it means that it's actually going to get pretty good reception or pretty good broadcast capability if you're running it as its own network access point. All right, now I know what you're thinking. Let's go ahead and take the telescope pieces apart and let's mount this puppy on there. That is falling prey to one of the classic blunders. The first one is obviously never get involved in land war in Asia. The second one is just don't try to assume that a new computer is going to work right the first way. And always start with RTFM. Read the fine manual. So on the thumb drive, we've got 2 manuals here. I did take Latin in high school for a little bit, but I do not understand Italian. So we'll go ahead with the English one. All right, here we go. All right, so the Eagle is plugged in and eagling. It beeped on startup and beeped again to let me know that it, I think, is ready to connect to. So supposedly you do not need to have this hooked into a monitor on first startup, which is pretty cool. So they're recommending that I use remote desktop here, and I'm just going to follow through the instructions to get myself connected up. All right, let's see what it says. Connecting in here. Says to turn off the don't ask me again, and click accept. Boom. All right, I'm gonna say it. The Eagle has landed. Okay, now that we've moved on from that, we can see what we're looking at here. So all right, so now that we have the kind of additional software like Sequence Generator Pro and everything installed, it's time to start connecting hardware and making sure everything will work right. So what I'm going to start with is the Echo. So yes, it's a new piece of hardware that I didn't have in my makeup before, but it's also the one that is supposed to be for sure automatically recognized by the Eagle here. So I'm going to go ahead and plug it in and we'll see if it actually is picked up. All right, plugged it in. And let's see what happens. And there we go. So it looks like you need to click the connect button. That was something that wasn't spelled out in the instructions, but easy enough to figure out. And so there we go. So we have a temperature reading here. And the way the Echo works is you've got a temperature reading on the main unit itself that has a humidity sensor and everything to calculate the dew point, and then you have the temperature probe itself. And the way these are going to be put together is, if you notice, this is yellow and that's yellow, and what it's doing is you have 5, 6, and 7 here for temperature probes, and those correspond to 5, 6, and 7 here on the dew heater outputs. So a little bit different than what I've seen on some other ones that may consider all dew heaters the same. But in this case, it really is taking separate temperature readings for each one of these, combined with the humidity from the core, to actually decide what level of output to put per unit. That may be a little overkill, or for some setups that have very large scopes or things like that, that might be exactly what you need. And so this piece of gear up and running. Next, we'll move on to our more traditional pieces of gear like the cameras and the actual telescope mount and all that good stuff. All right, so supposedly with the Eagle, it allows me to take a PC like this and connect it directly into all of this hardwise, and then save a ton on the cables. I'm supposed to do all that using just the Allen wrenches. So we're going to give that a shot and put it to the test. right, now that we've got everything hooked in, let's go ahead and get it up on the mount and see what we see here. Good and tight. So there we go. Everything is now up here except for the few things that we still need to do. So, power. We've got our power adapter. Run that in here. All right. And then after that, we would be connecting down to the telescope. Normally you're used to having to kind of bring everything else down to the telescope there. I'm sorry, connecting up to the telescope. So for now, I'm just going to run this over as a single cable on this end. As always, you have to turn a USB cable 3 times to get it the right way. And then I have my cable for my pole master, but only when I need it, and take that off. So at that point, got everything. I've got one cable coming from the telescope to the computer here, and a cable for power. And that's really all that's running down from the top of this rig. So I can kind of get those stowed or controlled really well, say right here with just some Velcro, and everything else just lives on top. So that's the goal there, and we're going to see how well that works once I really get it out under the stars. But the last test here, now that I've really plugged everything in, is pushing this button, and 1, hoping it doesn't all blow up, and then 2, we'll go take a look at it and see if everything still shows that it's connected. All right. Had the good sound, didn't blow up. Let's go take a look. All right, so now I've gone through and checked my connections on everything. Turns out I had some firmware that I needed to update on the telescope. Not an issue of the new computer, other than just finding out there was some new software available. So I went through and did that. And I also noticed that on the Eagle here, for some reason, the USB ports here needed to be power cycled one more time, and then everything was working fine there. So let's go ahead now. That was all one by one. Now I've got everything just plugged in, and we'll see kind of starting through if we can have them all start up together. So I'm going to start by connecting up the Echo. All right, that's connected. And then we'll go in here to the Ioptron Commander. This has been connected as well for the telescope mount. And then we're going to do the rest all through here in SGP for the main equipment. So we're going to start with the camera. And you see it is cooling the camera down right now. That's good. Check the filter wheel. Filter wheel connected. It says it's currently at red. Tell it to go to blue. And that's working. I'm going to connect up the focus controller. I can see right here it's showing the focus and the temperature there. So that's all good. And then lastly, the telescope, which is what I had to start up before this here. Click connect, and that's connected in as well. So all the gear for SGP seems to be connected up and working just fine. I'm just going to take one on the camera and verify. Yep, that's at 1 second. Let's go to 0.01. And there we go. Yep. So we're definitely getting image out of that. The last one that haven't hooked up yet, I've hooked up, but you don't see it in SGP, is my guide camera. So I'm going to come in here and check the guide camera, which is the QHY. Connect that in. and we're getting an image as well. This, once again, all this is looking at the wall, so not an interesting image, but we are getting an image. So all the gear is connected up and working simultaneously. Everything else at this point is software. So good, successful first setup of the computer there, and from then on out, it's just taking it outside, seeing if it all works and all of that. All right. So that about concludes my initial unboxing and setup video for the Eagle computer from Primalucha Lab. Now I'm just waiting for it to actually go through its startup routine so I can kind of show you how quickly this thing goes from power off to ready to go. But so far, I'm pretty impressed with it. It did connect up here, kind of ended up turning it back around because I like having the power cords more up to the front instead of in the back, where I just had too much at the very back of the unit. And that beep there means that it says it's ready to be connected to. So just pull up my iPad, the remote desktop app, securing connection, and we're in. So at this point, I can connect up the Echo. While it's connecting, I'll go ahead and power on the mount. Open up Sequence Generator Pro here. SGP's up. Connecting camera, connected. Connecting filter wheel, connected. Connecting focuser, connected. And connecting the driver there. And then I use Sky Safari on the iPad as well. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on Sky Safari, click connect to connect up to the telescope, talking through Sequence Generator Pro. That's where it is, and let's tell it to go right up here. And there we go. So as you can see, running it all through the iPad here, and it connects up pretty much like a dream. Haven't had any issues with it. I've been kind of playing around with it in this state for a couple of days while I'm waiting on clouds to clear and things like that. I know under first light I'm going to need to do some configuration and tweaking for PhD to get the guiding right and that kind of thing, and I'm sure there's a couple settings that I thought I had set up right in Sequence Generator Pro that I'll have to tweak, but overall I'm pretty impressed with it. One thing that I've noticed is that this isn't a plastic box. It's got an aluminum chassis around the whole thing, and while in general that's pretty light, it is more weight than what I had up here before. So I'm still currently working with the single counterweight, but it's getting kind of dangerously close to the very bottom of that counterweight bar. So depending on what I'm seeing during guiding here, I may need to switch to two weights that are moved a little bit higher up. But I'll do a separate video once I've had a little bit of time to really use this out in the field and determine kind of my final thoughts on that as an overall review. But to start off with, this really is a pretty neat tool here, and I'm excited to be able to use it in the field here, to not have my laptop out there and to really just have one block for everything that's tube related and all the equipment with just these two cables running down, and that's it to control the whole thing. So for now, that's it. I'll see you guys next time, and until then, I wish everybody clear skies. Thanks.